What up, Doe? This is the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, the podcast where six guys from around the British Isles get together to talk about anything and everything Detroit Lions. My name is Anthony Fitzpatrick, and I am joined this evening by Steve Collins. Steve, how are you doing this evening?
I'm all good, yes. Six guys talking about the Lions, but the one guy who normally anchors us, Matthew Turner, isn't here this week, which means we could just go wild. I mean, so many benefits. First of all, we don't have to compare every excellent touchdown to a Mo Salah goal. That's a big plus. We don't have to listen to talk about the Trey Flowers. That's another plus. Where do I stop?
Oh, it's brilliant. I think we should have a continent out in Bradford listening to a Swedish rock band. I know Ryan Farden, he's over in the States at the minute, he's in LA for the game this weekend, and Matthew is in the land of sheep and dragons for the weekend. So, yeah, a little bit of a cultured take from the panel this week, but you've got me and Steve, so, bear with us as we go along. I'm doing the stream again tonight, so might be a few hiccups, but we're hoping this goes smoothly. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. I will try and converse with you in YouTube chat and everything. I'm still learning how to do this properly, but you join us today for episode 86. Tua Be or not Tua Be? That is the question, and that is how you read out a title, Matthew. But yeah, don't worry, we're not going to sit here and talk to you about how we want to trade for Tua Tagovailoa too much. I saw the chance for a Shakespeare joke, and I went for it. If you've not read that, then I recommend that you do so there. But anyhow, we'll move on. So we're going to have a little reminisce about the Bengals game over the last weekend, because myself and Steve haven't really talked about this on the pod yet. We're then going to have a little look through some Lions news, through some opinion pieces as well, because there's a lot that we really need to chat about, and we don't really often get chance to chat about it sometimes when we're doing these game reviews and previews. And then obviously we're going to look ahead to this coming weekend when the Lions travel to LA to meet their ex, but we will get to him later. So yeah, we'll crack on to start with. So we weren't on the podcast on Monday, Steve. Obviously we've had 4 days now to think about the Bengals game, let the emotions settle down a little bit. How are you feeling now that you've had a chance to have a little bit of clarity on the game? What sort of the overriding things you had coming out of that one?
It's going to be a long season. Like it's feeling now like a long season. You know that feeling you get when you've got 17 games and you can't wait for them to start, and then they start and you're still in the start of the season and the games seem to be going really slowly, but now they seem to be going really slowly. And I think the thought of another season plus, where are we now? We're in game 7, so we've got 9. So we've got potentially another 25, 26 games of Jared Goff. That all of a sudden feels like a crushing weight on my shoulders. So that's kind of like one thought. I think as well, we've kind of, no matter how hard you try, you can't help but getting caught up in, the hopium pipe puffing. Because, I think we all thought that this season would be different, and it has been different, but the results haven't. And I think that's probably like my biggest takeaway, that we've got a lot more of this to come, and we're probably only going to win 2 or 3 games maximum. I kind of got flagged that we might finish 5-12. I think I said at the start of the season, and I thought I was being a bit pessimistic, but maybe we'd get to 6 or 7. But now I'm thinking 2 or 3. So that's quite a bitter pill to swallow.
I mean, you're right, absolutely. From a results standpoint, this season has been, I would say, disappointing. We were maybe expecting a win or 2 by now, but I think for me, the more this season's going on, obviously the emotions on game day are high, but when it gets to Monday, when it gets to Tuesday, I'm sitting down and I'm looking at the players, I'm looking at the player development, I'm looking at the little things here that give us hope for the future. I mean, I always go on Twitter. I always, when the PFF grades come out, I have a look through the games. I have a look through the tape. I always try and find somebody or some people to sort of shout out and say, look, this is the good that's happening this season. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, despite what is going on, I mean, you take a look at the defensive performance when we shut them out for a good portion of that game. It was just simply the defense was getting gassed because they were out there for so long. I mean, we've not seen defensive football this good since Matt Patricia was here. This is maybe 3-4 years ago. The intensity they're bringing, you know, they're getting heavy in the tackles, they're shutting down quickly. Yes, they're giving up big plays, I must admit, but you've got 3 undrafted free agents in your secondary. You've got guys who are 4th, 5th round guys back there. You don't really have a stud elite guy. I mean, you've got Tracy Walker who's balling out, but these are things that are going to happen. But these guys who have come in are really looking good. I mean, Jerry Jacobs, it was his week this week. He looked amazing in this game. I know he gave up, 6 receptions on 7 targets, and he gave up a few yards in there, but the all-round aspect of his game looked really good. And so I think that's what I'm focusing on. Aleem McNeil, I'm seeing him. He's getting much better. He's getting after the quarterback. His pass rushing arsenal's getting there. Yes, he was up against a weak centre, but it's just little things like this. Barnes graded over a 90. I mean, I think he's becoming the guy we all expected him to be. And, you know, please, Dan Campbell, start giving him more and more snaps right now because, you know, we want to see that there. But that gives me a lot of optimism. This draft class is performing well. The undrafted free agents are performing well. Just at the minute, we're at the start of a rebuild, so I think we're going to have issues there. I don't think it's unfair to say there are a lot of positives to find amongst the, you know, amongst the heartache, amongst other things.
100%. You know, we are so focused on results, but that's the kind of nature of like the NFL and the nature of any kind of sport, really. You know, there's positives in the offense. You know, I think that Quintez Cephas has looked, you know, like a guy that has massive potential and has really started to deliver. And his injury and the timing of it just couldn't have been worse. But it kind of sums up our luck. But had you got Cephas down as, you know, someone that was going to be established and on the roster in a couple of seasons' time? I certainly hadn't. He's really proved himself. I think Jamal Williams has shown. I think we all thought it was a good pickup in free agency, but I don't think we thought he would be anything other than a bit of a workhorse. But the guy is a serious bulldozer. And yeah, we talk about like the infectious spirit he brings to the locker room and all that kind of stuff, but the guy is just a very good running back, and combined with Swift, again, massive potential there. I still don't think Swift's quite fit, and what I certainly don't want to do is see Swift get injured and then come into the next season unfit. But for me, I mean, on an offense where there is precious little to celebrate, that's like, you know, 2 or 3 wins there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of downside and a lot of worries. And, you know, I think probably Jared Goff and TJ Hawkinson are probably 2 big ones for me.
Oh, absolutely. But I think this was always a season where we were going to be running into things like this. I mean, quarterback of 12 years is gone. All our wide receivers gone. I mean, it's a shame, really, because as you say, there are a lot of pieces in that offense that are there. The running back tandem is there. The offensive line is there when it's fit. We've just not had them available. But even in relief, the relief guys have looked good. I pointed out Evan Brown this weekend. You know, replacing Frank Ragnow is one of the hardest jobs in football because he's one of the best centres. And you're coming up against a defensive line which is one of the best in the league, especially when it comes to run D. But they've got some great edge rushers in there as well. And he really came out and did well. So, I mean, for me, I'm finding a lot of positives. I think the very fact that we've been angry in some games that we've not won. I mean, who would expect us in this deep into a rebuild after 3 games that we're upset we've not beat the Baltimore Ravens, who are one of the most, you know, potent offenses in the entire NFL. We limited them to 17 points, something like that. So I don't know. I find myself coming out of these games and I find a lot of positives. And yes, I'm annoyed, but in terms of the Bengals, this was just a bad mismatch for us. I said it last week in the preview.
You did. You called it really early on, and you said this is a terrible matchup for us.
It is, and it came true. That inside defensive line of theirs, they all grade above 80 blocking the run, and that came to pass. We got about 36 rushing yards in the entire game. We just couldn't get it going, and a good point was made. I think it was by one of the beat writers who said because Goff wasn't throwing deep, the safeties were coming up and they were adding even more pressure against the run game. But unfortunately, when you take that run game away from us, that just makes us one-dimensional. We can't just go to Goff all the time because we can't put it on his arm. It needs to work in tandem. The running game needs to do the bulk of the work, and Goff just needs to supplement that enough to be able to make the offense roll properly. So, that happened. And then you've got the young receiver core there. Higgins, you've got Boyd, you've got Chase, you've got a lot of guys there who are really good, and for 3/4 of that game we kept them quiet. I know early on we let one go, but there were so many drives that stuttered and stalled. Our young UDFAs went straight up against them and matched them step for step, but the trouble is the offense can't stay on. Eventually that quality, that little gap in quality, is going to tell, and it did. It was just a horrible matchup for this weekend, which is why I know we're going to talk about the Rams game later, but I'm convinced we're not going to be, the result is not going to be as bad just because of how the matchup works. And
I think I think I said like maybe a couple of weeks ago that the Bengals I think are massively underrated as a team, and I think they've got a real chance for a wild card spot. And they've got probably one of the best trio of wide receivers in Chase and Tyler Boyd and T Higgins. Like the tight ends are good. The O-line is okay, but Burrow, to me, I really like the look of the guy. I think coming off that knee injury, he has been better than average as a QB and makes some great throws. He's a real brave dude as well in terms of how he'll just put his head down and run. The defense is nasty. We've got talent everywhere, and it was just bad matchup after bad matchup. So, but I kind of think Dan Campbell seemed really pissed off afterwards, and I think it's because against those kind of teams, you just, first of all, you've got to make plays, and secondly, you just can't make mistakes. You can't miss tackles. You can't miss coverage, and this is the problem: is no matter how well the front seven plays and defense, no matter how well Jerry Jacobs has kind of picked up, someone somewhere is making a mistake. And in the NFL, a good QB will absolutely torch any errors that people make, and we're constantly making errors. We saw that against the Vikings in terms of how it finished, and we just saw it all the way through the Bengals game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this offense needs to find a way to stay on the field. Aaron Glenn is working miracles with what he has at his disposal on this defense. This is the first time, I believe, we lost the time of possession, and it was like 24-36. That's you can't have that. If that was the other way round, and that defense, which is playing well, is only on there for 24 minutes, totally different game. We could be a lot closer, score some points. We're in that, but they need to find a way. But it was just a bad matchup along the way, and I just predicted a loss from the start. But I'm seeing the positives. And if you're a Lions fan out there, I would say to you, there's a lot of positives there. What Hank Fraley's doing with the O-line, with all these guys missing, he's still getting backups, people who haven't played in years, to play really well. And, I mean, the receivers, as you say, they're doing little bits, they're showing enough, but the defense especially, we could be filling a lot of holes we weren't expecting to fill this year, especially in that corner room. But
and so I was interested in your opinion, because we talked a lot about the offense, we talked a lot about Goff. What about the O-line though? Because the O-line was kind of seen as we're going to be like a top 5, top 10 unit minimum in terms of our O-line, and we know the injuries have happened and just kind of like decimated that plan. But what do you think about the general play of the O-line over the last few weeks?
It's hard. I mean, you can't just take away your best centre and your best left tackle and not, they're working with a handicap, but I'm quite happy with what I've seen. A lot of the tape you see, a lot of these bad Jared Goff throws, they're not because of pressure, they're just bad throws. The offensive line is giving him time to throw. Yes, they're struggling in the run game, but again, missing two of our best guys. Ragnar's a huge part of the run game because he just trucks guys over for fun, makes big holes down the middle for us to exploit. But overall, considering we've got a backup at right tackle, we've got a second-year rookie at left guard, we've got a complete novice at centre. I know Evan Brown has been around the league for years, but he's not started games. And Penei Sewell is a rookie as well. He's a first-year rookie. I think they've done incredibly well in the circumstances. I feel like I've not been upset about that. I've not been watching games and going, oh my god, this offensive line has lost us the game. They haven't. They've not been playing bad. So, again, that just gives me a reason for positivity. I'm seeing good coaching there. I'm seeing players developing. I mean, how often would Matt Patricia bring, just a random guy off the practice squad like Evan Brown and he'd come in and he'd perform well? He wouldn't. You wouldn't see that sort of player development here. The rookies are doing really well, and I'll quickly just tail off here the guys who are in the chat. So Dan is in Twitch. Thanks very much for joining us. He says Goff stepping back 11 feet deep doesn't help, which is true because it means that offensive line has to block for longer. More chances of penalties, more chance you're going to let the guy through, which is absolutely true. I just give a shout out to the guys in YouTube as well. Rock Howard, One Pride 40, they're having an interesting conversation in there, which I'm keeping an eye on. Rock Howard says our draft class was a 10 out of 10, and you know what? For the most part, I agree with that. I've been very highly, I've highly praised Holmes for this draft. Obviously, some players we've not really been able to see anything of. Levi in little spurts if he's out, but he was well on his way to making himself a starting corner before he did. Penei's having growing pains, but again, we're missing all our senior guys on there. He's basically a senior guy on that line already. There's a lot of pressure on him against some of the league's best. Derek Barnes is standing up at linebacker. He's going to be a great player for us for years to come. And Aleem's going to be a monster. I mean, I love seeing his progression. He struggled a bit in the first few games, but as a centre, it's a very rough and tumble job. You're getting double teamed, triple teamed all the time. It's very hard, to make noticeable plays, but he's just one of those guys who gets about his work. He takes the double teams, he gives opportunities to his teammates, and I think the overall defensive line play has been better. I mean, I think we're up at a lot more sacks than we were this time last year. We got 4 on Lamar Jackson. That Baltimore offensive line don't give up many sacks. We got 4, so it's great to see. And I think One of the guys in the chat asks, what do you think about the 2 new defensive tackles, Levi and Aleem? Obviously, we've not been able to see much of Levi, but have you watched Aleem much? Were you impressed there, or do you think there's a bit more that can be had with him?
I think I can see flashes of good stuff. I think my issue is that, Joe Mixon, I would say, is a slightly above average running back, but he's not a top 10 running back in the NFL. And it just looked like he could run on us whenever he liked. And the Bengals were a team that are quite pass heavy. I think he ran 18 carries, 94 yards, an average of 5.2. I mean, that's just not good enough, because against a really good running back, we're just going to get absolutely punished. And when our secondary is so ropey, we just can't allow that. So for me, I think there absolutely has been flashes from Aleem, from Levi, but I'm not sure there's been enough. And the softening of our run defence it just worries me a bit.
See, I'm a little bit opposite on this. Obviously, yes, we do still need to see some production from them there, but I think the fact that the secondary is so weak means we're not in a position where we can bring the safeties up to help, where we can bring the linebackers up a bit more to blitz. I mean, against Chicago, one of the big things, I was flabbergasted as to how their trash O-line dealt with these guys so easy. But when you go back and watch the game, they stacked the box with players. They had blocking tight ends in, fullbacks in, running backs in blocking, and we had 3 or 4 guys there. We were still dropping deep, even though they were only sending 1 or 2 receivers up. Just because there's weaknesses there, we can't send the additional help to the line, which helps it get production. So, for me, it'll be great when Levi's back because he's great at making something out of nothing. Obviously, you need to manage his back issue well, but I still think he'll be the right pick in the end. But, well, we'll move it on because we've been talking...
I would just say as well that the one player that has stepped up, that you mentioned earlier, is Tracy Walker. I mean, with the secondary struggling and, the front seven needing help, for me, Walker's looked like someone that, is improving with the coaching, and B, is putting his all into it. And when you compare his performance, with with like Harris, I mean, it's just night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. It's the guys he's been with. He had Harmon last year who started alright, but then he looked like he couldn't be arsed at all. He's got Harris there. I don't think it's all on him. It's like we've seen with Anzalone. Now that Collins has gone, and we've got Barnes in there, and we've got Reeves-Maybin in there who's doing, fine in the circumstances. He can get on with his job a bit more, and he looks better. But I don't know. We'll see about it. I mean, we've got a few
Derek Barnes made a great play as well. I think he like tipped the ball and defended a pass. It was an absolutely fantastic play, and Barnes again is showing flashes.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, hopefully, they might get a bit more aggressive with their defense, because I think the secondary showed last week that they can mix it with the best. And these guys who are giving their all out there, and I think they can go toe to toe with them if you give them a little bit of trust. Bring some more pressure, help that front seven, and just disrupt guys that way. But we'll talk about the game plan later. There's a few comments coming in. So One Pride 40, he's said, what Campbell's doing is developing depth this year, and you know what, I fully agree with that. I mean, we've talked about Cephas, Amon-Ra's coming through. If in that wide receiver core by the end of this year you've got Cephas playing well, you've got Amon-Ra playing well, there's your slot guy, there's one of your depth receiver guys. That's one less thing you've got to worry about. In the cornerback room, if even two of Price, Jacobs, Parker, all these guys make it onto the roster next year because of their performances, these are depth spots that we don't need to worry about anymore, and they're going to be much better depth than we've had in recent years. So, I think that's what I like about this season. I know it's not nice getting humbled every weekend and, late buzzer beaters and stuff like that, which just make me want to cry because I want to win, but outside of it all, I can see the development there. So, I'm very positive about that, but we'll move this on because we've got a lot to go through this evening. Just a few more comments that we'll go through whilst before we set on some of the news. So Dan asks in Twitch on the chat, apparently John Whittaker from POD has tweeted he'd be open to trading DeAndre Swift for Tua Tagovailoa. And he's asking us what our opinions are. Now, I know the show's called Tua Be, but that's just a Shakespeare point. I'm not in favour of trading for Tua. Not because I don't like Tua, but I ain't trading DeAndre away. I mean, he's still got 3 years left on his rookie deal. He's got a lot of production left in him yet. I think him and Jamal work well as a put. We've been asking for a run game in Detroit for like a millennium. We've got one, and then we want to trade him away. We're going to talk about the trade talk in a minute, and we'll go into it in more depth, but it's really winding me up. Just quickly on this, but I'll come back to it more in depth later. Would you do that deal? Yes or no?
I mean, Swift is the future. Like, Swift, one of that core group of 7 or 8 players that is the future of the franchise if we're going to be successful. If we trade Swift, all we're going to do is leave a massive gap in terms of talent and potential.
Yeah.
And Tua, I mean, I don't, do I even want to talk about Tua? I mean, the guy is a struggling QB who's never really made an impression in the league. I know he's playing in a shitty team, but he's not a guy that looks like he has got the talent to take us on from where we are now. He looks like someone who's like a project for someone.
Yeah.
Like, as a backup.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where I'm at the minute. And plus, we don't need to be giving any more draft capital away just yet. You've got to see what the value is, what you'd be trading for him against what you can get in the draft. And DeAndre is a high price at the minute. Like it or not, he's just a second-round draft pick from last year. Well, just.
Why would you trade? Why would you trade actual, real talent for potential talent.
And this is my issue, and we're going to talk about this very, very soon. I'm just going to quickly go through a few more of the comments before we do. So, Hatter's House 710 in YouTube, he goes, I'll be at the game this weekend. I live about 30 minutes from Inglewood. Well, Hatters, if you go to our Twitter and you find Ryan Farden on there, he's one of our panelists. You usually see him on a Monday. He's actually in LA at the game this weekend. If you want to try and hunt him down, he's a very friendly London lad, part of our pod here, so
you'll find him near a bar.
You'll find him in a bar, yes, and he might be wearing an Arsenal shirt. I don't know. Oh, mind you'll not know what Arsenal is, will he? But yeah, he's out there. So if you want to try and find him, by all means, he's a great guy. He loves the Lions. He'll chat to you all day about them. Just moving through there. No, we'll come back to that one later. Someone else said something, and I couldn't. Oh yeah, Friendly Neighbourhood Lions fan asks, should the Lions trade Goff? Now, just taking all the financials out of the equation, if you had a chance to do it now, I guess, would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, but the only franchise that will trade for him is someone who is making a playoff run and lose their starting QB through injury.
Yeah.
Like say someone like, if the Seahawks were looking like they were competing and Russell Wilson got injured, are they going to start with Geno Smith, or could they make a trade? I'm not sure Goff would be on their top 5 list, but that's the kind of team that maybe we could get rid of him. But he's got a horrible contract.
Yeah, that's it. It's the contract there. But I think, for my terms of view, I don't tend to get too bothered by the Jared Goff contract. I mean, I know he's here for 2 years as a minimum, but for me, that puts it perfectly in our time frame. If I was asked this, I can't remember who I was chatting with the other day. I think it was just after the college podcast yesterday, actually. I was chatting with Matt and Ryan about it, and if you told me now we've got 26, 27 games left of Jared Goff, if we were offered that, but in return, we get a guy in the draft in 1 or 2 years' time who's a bona fide starter, who's a good caliber guy, and he's got a full team around him because we've spent these 2 years building the rest of the team first. As hard as it is for me to say, I'd take that, because I'm fully of the belief that your quarterback comes either last or you draft him a little earlier, but he's a developing guy who's going to sit. And I think that was the whole purpose of the restructure with Goff. Give him 2 years to prove that he can do it here, and if not, that'll be about when we're ready for our quarterback. So, for me, it just, as much as it hurts to say that he might be here another 26, 27 games, I think you play the long game with it, you'll come out of it the other end a lot better for it. We've seen with Stafford, if you don't put a team around him, then it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is, you're going to lose. And if you draft your quarterback too early, look at the Cardinals with Kyler Murray now. He's 3 years in, he's going to be getting paid next year. That's going to severely limit their ability to put a team around him. But they look great this year, but it's such a small window because they drafted him early. And only a year after.
I know, but we do need a window to enjoy football. And another 26 games of Goff.
Yeah, I get it.
What's that going to do to the attendance in Ford Field?
It's yeah.
We need to. You can't just build something out of absolute ashes instantly. You need to progressively build. And my worry is that, and I touched on it about Hockenson. I just think that if you've got a bad QB, you're just going to ruin the existing roster. I mean, Hockenson, I'm just really worried about him. He just looks like a shadow of what we've seen. I mean, I think he, for me, is one of someone just said in the chat about cornerstone pieces and Swift being a cornerstone piece. Hockenson is a cornerstone for us. We don't want to be giving up, making another tight end draft pick high. We don't want to be paying for a big money tight end. We've got one of the best tight ends in the league, but he's getting his soul kicked out of him week by week.
And this is my problem with the tank crowd. The tank crowd go, oh yeah, let's lose every week and get a high draft pick, but you don't know what you're doing to your existing team in doing so. You're creating a losing culture. This is a team that has drafted 7th, 3rd and 7th in the last 3 years. Another high draft pick is just going to install a culture of losing, and I know they believe over there that, yeah, let's get the first round pick and let's build around that. But we've got a lot of good pieces here. I think we forget that. Just because Goff is here and we've not got the receivers, the rest of the offense is getting forgotten about. We've got 2 high-level running backs, a Pro Bowl tight end, a really good offensive line when it's fit. We need to worry about these guys and not losing them, and you can't lose every single week and keep them happy. You'll lose them, and then you just set your effort back. But we'll segue this on, because we've talked about the Bengal game, so I'll go into the news and the opinion pieces, and the first bit's really about this, so it just segues in nicely. So this one is obviously about Taylor Decker. Now obviously he's been out, he's been on IR for a few weeks with his finger injury, and Dan Campbell was talking about him earlier this week. He's back at training now, so they have 21 days to activate him. I believe he's been in there for about a week now, so we're about 2 weeks left that we either have to activate him back to active duty and playing in the team, or we have to shut him down. But when asked about it, Campbell said, we've really only got another 2-week window here on him since we started his clock. We're going to have to figure something out in the next couple of weeks on him one way or another, whether he is on the roster, activated and ready to go. If not, we have to put him down for the rest of the season. I don't know where this is going to go short term. I really don't right now. We'll just have to see how it feels. Now, obviously, seeing people talk about it, there's 2 schools of thought to this. Obviously, the crowd who want him back are like, well, we're going to hope that he's fit, but obviously if it gets to the D-Day and he's not ready to go, you've got to shut him down. But if Taylor Decker gets to D-Day and he is ready to go, people are now questioning, do you want to bring him back? Because obviously this season is a loss at this point in time. Do you want to risk him here? And I've seen a lot of people saying we should shut him down even if he's healthy. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this, because there's 2 schools of thought, and I have a very, very strong view for this, and why I think those who want to shut him down are wrong even if he's healthy. But I wanted to ask you about it first. What's your take on Decker's situation, and what would you do if he was healthy and you had the choice to activate him or not?
This is a really tough one. Okay, say it was Ragnar in the same situation, then I think my view would be shut him down. The thing with Decker is, by bringing Decker back at left tackle, it moves Sewell over to right tackle, and we want to see what Sewell looks like at right tackle, and we can't do that if Decker's on IR. So even though I would like to protect Decker, protect his health, not bring him back early without being properly rehabbed, and then his finger becomes a problem all the way through the off season, and he's not healthy and he's missed practice at the start next season. I just think because of the whole Sewell dynamic, I'd like to see them both playing again, and I'm sure like Hank Fraley and Dan Campbell would want to get a look at them as well.
Absolutely, and for me this goes back to the whole, trying to build your culture here, trying to convince players to stay here. There's no way in God's green earth I am shutting Taylor Decker down if he's healthy, or if he can still play this season. Taylor Decker is the kind of guy we want to see player development this year. That's what we all want. We've said we want to see the players get better. Well, your rookie players, your fringe players, they only get better when they're playing with the best. You need these elite guys around them, not only for their leadership on the field, but for the example they set. They push you to try harder, they push you to train harder. They're the guys you need in your team, and you need Taylor Decker in that offensive line. Jonah Jackson struggled heavily at the start of this season, really bad, gave up lots of pressures, gave up multiple sacks in one game. It's not like him. He had a steady year last year, but he had Decker on one side, he had Ragnar on the other, helping him develop as a player. Now, he's gotten better as the season's going on, and it's really good to see, but his development improves even quicker if he's playing next to Taylor Decker. Penei Sewell gets better if he's got Taylor Decker on the field with him, because Taylor's the one who's playing to a Pro Bowl standard, who is a really good left tackle. If there's anyone you can learn off and develop your game off, it's Taylor Decker. And shutting him down and sending him away for the season, yes, it may save him, but it's at the cost of your team. I want every great player we've got out there playing. If it would be the same with Ragnow. You said maybe you'd shut him down if he was on the fringe, but I'd put Ragnow in there as well, because again, all those rookies and lesser guys on the offensive line, they will only play better with him in there, and they will only develop better. That is my take on it. That is what I'd say.
I think the difference with Ragnar is it means that you get more of a look at Evan Brown, and he gets the opportunity to play more and maybe develop. Whereas we kind of know what, I mean, Ragnar is like elite, and we know what we're getting from him. I don't know. It's a really difficult one, but for me, I want to see Decker and Saul playing together.
It's vital. That is what the offensive line is going to be for the next few years, like it or not. Taylor Decker's going nowhere, and we discussed the trade on one of the pods a few weeks back, and it's just, I'm sick and tired of, Lions fans complaining there's no talent on the team, that we're in this hole, but they want to trade away their only assets. Taylor Decker's 28 years old. Anthony Costanzo was playing till he was 34 and was one of the best left tackles in the league. He was underappreciated like Decker was as well. We will be competing in 5 years. We will be a really good team then. And Sewell can bed in at right tackle. Let's stop trading away our talent for potential future picks. We've got enough in next year's draft already. We've got enough to play around with, trade with, get more picks. We don't need more and more and more. But
no, absolutely. Yeah, the whole trade talk just needs to stop.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense. And it's just people making absurd knee-jerk reactions.
Exactly. And I want my team to be competitive all year. I don't want to be getting to game 10, all my elite players out for the season, and then the rookies just getting left there hung out to dry, because that won't be good for their long-term development either, getting whipped every week. I want to see this team win some games and stay competitive and have its best players available all year, and I don't want to hear talk about shutting them down or trading them or vice versa, but we'll see. It's an interesting one, and I hope to God that he is well to play. I don't want to lose them both for the year. That'd just be such a kick in the teeth, but we'll see what goes on. I've got a few more bits. One Pride 40 says in the chat, win a couple of games and guarantee Hawk wants to stay. Exactly. He is a player who will want to see his team developing. He wants to see that it's worth staying here. And you're not going to get that by tanking for the number 1 draft pick this year. If anything, you're going to push him away. And then, you're in a hole again. So, I don't know. We'll see. Dan asks on Twitch, he goes, do you think Campbell's going to ask Decker to move over to right tackle next year? Do you think he'd move? I mean, I've seen a lot of people say this. They say, oh, if Decker doesn't move to right tackle, then he should go. He's not got the team in mind, blah, 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 blah. But he's earned the right to play there, hasn't he? He got a lot of stick from Lions fans early on, including myself. I'll hold my hands up. I didn't think he was worth the deal at the time, but he's proven that he more than worthy is. He's earned that spot. And, Penai should just have to wait his turn, in my opinion. But I don't know about you.
I mean, I think the NFL's a different ball game from, say, like soccer, where you get kind of prima donna players. Oh, I don't like playing on the left wing. I don't like cutting inside of my right foot. I like playing in the number 10 role. I don't think that's how it works in the NFL. I think these guys would, I think Decker would probably play at safety if you asked him to. They want to play in the NFL. They want to play for, kind of showcase their abilities. For me, I think where players can play in multiple positions, it doesn't strike me that if you move a player to a position they're not comfortable with and then they start struggling, then that might affect their morale. But I think both Decker and Saul could probably play at left or right tackle, and after maybe a short adjustment period, a game and a half, I think they'd be absolute monsters wherever they play.
Exactly. I don't think anyone takes this into consideration. It's like, well, why do you have to shoehorn one of them in there? Why can't we use multiple different setups with them? They're both first-round draft picks. They're both highly skilled. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do this. I mean, someone quoted on our Twitter today saying, because I was talking about Campbell or something, they were going, oh yeah, well, they've picked Penei Sewell this year. They've picked a left tackle and they've put him at right tackle, same old Lions, But that happens a lot. Right tackle, I believe. He was the Notre Dame left guard. It was the other one I was thinking of. Elijah Vera Tucker. he was a left tackle last year for Minnesota. He's playing